Thanks for clicking on the thumbnail, guys. This is 10 of the toughest PS1 bosses. Now, I remember being all of 13, 14 years old when the PS1 first came out. I saw it displayed in Toys R Us, Walmart, then a friend of mine actually got one. It truly was a mind-blowing experience. I was still playing on the Genesis and the SNES at the time, and I remember thinking, why can't Nintendo come out with something like this? Little did I know how ironic that would actually be. Today we're going to take a look at 10 of the toughest boss fights on the PS1, and I encourage you to re-rank these bosses down below in the comments or add any other boss you thought should have been on this list. Because there's literally hundreds, hell thousands of PS1 games, picking 10 is just a drop in the bucket for all the potential contenders. Obviously this list is not definitive, I've done my research, but this is only my personal picks. Number 10. Goro, Mortal Kombat 1. By way of the Mortal Kombat trilogy. So starting off our list, from all the fighting games on the PS1 that we could choose from, Mortal Kombat is still going to take the top 10 spot, and there's a reason that the franchise is still thriving all these years later. It would make sense that the hardest enemy in the original Mortal Kombat would be the final boss, Shang Tsung, but in actuality it's the number 2 man, or half-dragon prince, that's really number 1. He's immune to throwing attacks, and his ability to spew fire and jump enormous heights, Goro is a suitable challenging opponent for the players. Plus, he's won the previous 9 Mortal Kombats up to date. In the game, he proves to be an excellent wall blocking the way to his master. Even with all the other Mortal Kombat games that were available at the time to choose from, Goro's challenge from the first installment still poses the most frustration and difficulty. Depending on the day, you know how they say any given Sunday, you might go in with your best fighter and your best moves, and Goro will still wipe the floor with you. Number 9. Float Stinger from Silent Hill. Now come on guys, think back, this one deserves to be on the list. This was a fun boss fight that you weren't really expecting. So some of the other bosses in the first Silent Hill are, really easy to dispatch. The vastly underrated Float Stinger is an absolute workhorse and pretty tough to defeat, especially when you're playing on hard mode for that extra challenge. The gigantic moth-like insect thing is able to hover all over you all the time. It can keep its distance or it can get really close, and it can confuse you by vomiting acid as its long-range attack and then come flying in and use its lethal stinger for its short range. Fighting Float Stinger on top of the post office roof at night makes the boss even harder to beat, since it can easily fly just above your camera angle view, then rapidly re-enter the screen for a quick 1-2 strike. It's a fun and challenging boss fight. It's things like this that still make Silent Hill a creepy classic for the PS1 library. Number 8, from Nightmare Creatures, Crowley. When I was doing the research for Nightmare Creatures, I immediately remembered that awesome opening track by Rob Zombie, and then I also remembered that that was actually for Nightmare Creatures 2. Still, the first Nightmare Creatures is a fun game. It's difficult. The final boss, Crowley, that's Dr. Crowley to you, after he drinks the last of his experimental formula, he turns into a massive winged creature and he takes to the rooftops. After he sends out several dozen demon minions after you and you fight them off, he comes down after you one-on-one. From here, the only way that you can beat him is to use a variety of your combination attacks in order to weaken him enough where you can do the final kick and decapitate him. Now that's easier said than done. What makes Crowley difficult is he is constantly attacking you, always moving forward, forcing you into walls or worse, off the side of the building, into lava. Even if you have your combos memorized, your timing is on point, he's still going to be a tough character. Number 7, from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, the Nemesis. So, playing as Jill, you have to face this hulking monster on multiple occasions, each with new environments and events that vary, and the fight will change and it'll help or hurt Nemesis greatly. Depending on when you fight him, he'll be incredibly tough, like at the Clock Tower fight, or super simple, like the first time you fight him. What makes him memorable and difficult is because he's a multi-fight character, frequently showing up with his rocket launcher. The final fight with Nemesis ends with a very satisfying evisceration with the experimental railgun. But depending on the difficulty setting, Nemesis can prove to be too much for most players who's not ready for this Terminator-like monster. Stars. You know I had to. Now we're definitely going to get some hate for this one, but coming in at number 6 from Tomb Raider 3 is Willard. Now, a lot of people will say that Willard is sort of a boring character. You know, there's not a lot to the final battle. There doesn't seem to be a lot of fanfare for him, especially when you think of all the other cool bosses and things that have happened up till Tomb Raider 3. What makes Willard a tough fight, though, is when he turns into this spider-like monster. You ever notice it's always spiders? I wonder if the game designers just liked them or if it was easier back then. Anyway, what makes it tough is that Willard will constantly be on you. You're going to have to fight him off while trying to collect all the artifacts around the level. If you fail to get them all, he won't die, he can't die, and he's going to continue to come after you. You need all 4. This adds just another layer to this fight and difficulty. Don't let this gameplay fool you, it is challenging. Number 5, Galamoth, from Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Another boss that could get some hate because technically there are tougher bosses in the game, but by the time you fight these other bosses, you're way more prepared and better equipped to do battle with them. So Galamoth is easily the hardest boss in the game if you don't know what you're doing. Now, every boss has a weapon weakness or strategies that you can use, and especially if you've played the game before or you Google it, you'll know what to do. Cough cough, shield rod. However, this large reptilian humanoid who easily fills up 3 screens and rocks some awesome gold armor is still an incredibly difficult boss fight. He's going to shoot out thunderbolts at you, and again, if you're not ready or prepared, will quickly drain your health. Oh yeah, did I mention he's got like 12,000 HP? Come on! Number 4 from Final Fantasy VII, Emerald Weapon. One of the 2 super weapon bosses, along with its sibling Ruby Weapon, these 2 could be considered 2 of the toughest bosses in Final Fantasy. Of the 2, Ruby has the higher defense and has a move that can take out multiple party members. What makes Emerald an exceedingly more devastating opponent is its location, at the bottom of the sea. With a time limit of only 20 minutes and a move that punishes you if you have a certain materia equipped that helps you stay underwater longer, and it has a higher HP, Emerald Weapon is nothing short of the biggest challenge in Final Fantasy VII. And again, guys, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments, because I know, just talking to some friends, that they say Ruby was harder for X, Y, and Z. So if you find Ruby the harder boss of the 2, let me know down in the comments, and the reasons why. Coming in at number 3, again from Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth. When Final Fantasy VII was first released on the PS1, the One-Winged Angel was one of the most popular characters in the game. The demon was born with the power to become a super, and once he discovers the origins of his power, he began his journey to take over the world. He may seem like an unbeatable enemy in the game, but there's a few things that you can do to make him fall short. In this battle against the former Shinra soldier, you can hear the awesome theme playing in the background while you fight him. He changes into 2 different super forms during the epic battle, putting you through the ringer with his incredible strength and invincibility. In one of the game's scariest surprises, you can find yourself in the mind of your protagonist. This 3rd phase collision with the megamaniacal villain serves as a reminder of how deadly he can be, even without a body. Number 2 from Metal Gear Solid, Psycho Mantis. Psycho Mantis is a challenge from the start, using both stealth and teleportation to avoid your attacks most of the time. This boss fight takes things to the next level, breaking fourth wall boundaries when the ghoulish fiend starts playing around with the game's controls and screens, often going against your input and making it look like the TV switched channels. It's an all-out battle of wills between you and one of the weirdest, most challenging AIs in the history of PS1. Metal Gear Solid was one of the most innovative stealth action games of all time, and many of its best, wildest features can be found in this iconic battle with Psycho Mantis. Number 1 from Mega Man 8, The Wily Machine. Now, I'm sure I'm going to hear it that this wasn't the hardest boss or even a hard boss down in the comments. And believe me, go for it. I welcome these comments because everyone's entitled to their opinion. For me, this is number 1. The Wily Capsule is the second iteration of the Wily Machine 8, and it's employing the same tactics as its predecessor. Dr. Wily would summon and then dismiss the capsule, which would unleash projectiles in various directions following distinct patterns. Notably, this particular capsule seems to be modified and a recolored version of the Wily UFO that we see earlier in the game. Additionally, it'll hover momentarily and then it'll appear and disappear swiftly, but it will retaliate if it's struck, so this poses a greater challenge to the effective utilization of a weakness of it using the flame sword. Furthermore, this machine can inflict significant damage and it'll really deplete your health fast, especially consider the absence of E-tanks, S-tanks, or M-tanks, with the exception of the Rush Charger, which will provide Mega Man with limited health recovery. And that's going to do it for my list, guys. My top 10 toughest PS1 bosses. So now it's your turn. Down in the comments, who do you think should be on this list? Who would you take off? Would you rearrange the order? I'd love to hear from you, so let me know down below and we can start a discussion on it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Take care, and I'll see you in about 1 week.